In the fall of 1987, local news channel WSB-TV 2 of Atlanta, Georgia, was attempting to fill a scheduling gap in their Sunday morning lineup. After a few salations by local business owners, they decided to allow the young Reverend Marley Sachs to take the available hour block to do a religiously themed show. It premiered October 18th with little promotion. The show was standard religious flair and consists of being Reverend sitting on the simple chair, reading passages from the Bible to the camera and discussing their interpretation and significance to our modern day-to-day life. The show received a reasonable number of viewers and continued to be shown in early December. It was then that the studio began to receive extremely strange complaints from the viewers of Words Light with the Rev. Marley Sachs. These calls were from the women, and women only, who vaguely referred to as uncomfortable feelings that they had at the very specific intervals during the program. They described the feelings of nausea, back pain, dizziness, blurred vision. These callers, for no discernible reason, were convinced that it was the viewing of this program that was causing these symptoms. It was later determined that after weeks of complaints that these feelings were happening at roughly 12 intervals during the course of the program. The small studio staff checked all the recording equipment, both audio and video, but found nothing faulty. When the Reverend was then made aware of these incidents, he merely shrugged and stated cryptically that some can't handle the voice of God. The head of the studio, at the loss of explain caused these complaints, decided to continue running the program. By February, viewership had dropped sharply, and it was decided to pull the plug on the show. The studio had figured out that it had been more prudent to spend much time as possible on the news story than they had the two other local news networks. A buzz miscarriage epidemic, starting sometime in November, and the number of healthy pregnant women miscarrying in the Atlanta metropolitan area had reached over 300. The CDC could find no discernible cause for this terrifying occurrence. The Reverend took the show's cancellation with that could only be described as the objective indifference. When informed, he made no protest, merely nodded, almost knowingly. He left the studio after the last episode was filmed, without so much as a word, and dropped off the face of the earth. No one had ever heard from him again, not his former congregation or any member of the church. The studio moved on, filling the slot with the informatical, and continued to concentrate on the miscarriage story. A year and a half later, an intern at the WSB studios discovered the tapes of Words of Light and began going through them in an attempt to find stock footage for an upcoming piece of station that was going on to impact religion on the city. The Atlanta incident, as the miscarriage epidemic, became known as the medical journals, petered out for 3 months after the studio canceled Reverend Sachs and show, and had already begun to fade from the public coincidences. As the intern went through the tapes, he accidentally made a disturbing discovery about the footage. While attempting to stop one recording by 10 minutes and 45 seconds, he mistakenly jammed the fast-forward button down. While the footage whizzed by, he attempted to pry up the button with a screwdriver. Just as he succeeded, the tape stopped at 32 minutes and 1 second. The intern actually fell out of his chair when he looked up and see what was frozen on the screen. It was a badly decomposed severed head filling up the entire frame. After he collected himself, he moved the film back a few frames, then forward to realize what his mind was not playing tricks on him. He began going through the rest of the recording, and soon discovered what exactly 12 minutes intervals and that image would appear for one frame. Thinking it was some practical joke being played by the new guy, he presented to one of the film's technicians. Ready to be mocked, the technician was just as puzzled as him. No one has touched the footage since the cancellation of the show. After the studio had closed for the night, The intern convinced Tech to go and help him throughout the tapes of the Words of Light. They discovered that every single episode had the same horrifying anomaly. They also had realized that the show had progressed the image to become more and more disgusting, as maggots began to eat away at the loose flesh and pieces of hair and skin that seemed to have fallen off exponentially. The tech made it clear to the intern that they were just seeing was technically impossible, since the film itself showed absolutely no signs of splicing, and he himself had been at every filming of the show and knew no one when this image could have been inserted into the frame. All this was presented to the studio head, who, fearing some kind of backlash over allowing this to get on the air, ordered all the tapes to be destroyed. He even told the intern and tech that he had no interest in knowing who did it at this point, only that covering this collective asses is what's important now. He demanded that they mention this to no one. The tech easily moved on, remembering the incident from the darkly funny personal anecdote, but the intern couldn't let it go. He had made copies of many of these tapes as he could before they were wiped, and he had took them to see if he could find anything else that might point out who did this or why they would. A week later, he attempted to rope the tech into helping him again, saying that he believed that he had discovered something even much more disturbing than the images themselves. When the single frames were edited together in chronological order, the head's mouth appeared to be moving, as if trying to form the words. The tech, fearing for his job, told him to get rid of the copies and not talk about it again. A week later, the police responded to a 911 call made by an elderly woman from one of the Atlanta suburbs at dusk. She had horrible noises coming from her next-door neighbor's house, where the young couple lived. She told the emergency responder that the wife was pregnant and that she was terrified that something may happen. When the officers arrived on scene 20 minutes later, they had found no lights on the windows and the front door ajar. They moved in slowly and made their way towards their bedroom. Inside, they found a young woman, dead, her abdomen slashed open. Her wound was jagged as the blood led from the dead body onto the couch far end of the room. There sat her husband, the studio intern, naked, the corpse of his unborn child at his feet, dying as his hand he held the rusty pipe of metal, sliding to use his hand, gutted his pregnant wife. The television was going on and playing 18-second loop of silent footage of a decomposing head, mouthing some unintelligible words. The story at the police clinic to this day keeps the intern saying under his breath over and over again as they led them away, "The light of God calls them."